We hope you enjoy this audio-only podcast. You can watch the full video versions on our YouTube channel at All Things Unexplained. There we share visuals, documents, and extended discussions you won't hear anywhere else. While you're there, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a new video. But for now, enjoy this audio version of All Things Unexplained.
All Things Unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.
All right, Unexplained Ones, it's Dr. Mounts, and welcome back to All Things Unexplained. So last Friday, apparently we had Disclosure Day potentially happening, and it did happen. Well, sort of. The government released some UFO files. We're going to get into some of my favorite parts of the files and some of the pros and cons of what happened. But first, if you could grab the subscribe button, we do weekly content on UFOs, Bigfoot, aliens, astrophysics, and everything in between. And yes, it's absolutely free. So if you're into those kinds of things and you want to support the channel, hit that sub button, leave a comment down below, and that will automatically enter you into our giveaways. And we have a lot of exciting things to give away. Just be a sub to All Things Unexplained. Leave a comment if you want. Stick around to the end of the video and we'll get into all the giveaway stuff again there. All right, so yes, indeed, last Friday, May the 8th, 2026, per President Trump's directive, the government released some UFO files. We had massive PDFs, images, videos, a lot to process. So I just want to go over some of these parts, kind of give you a feel for what exactly was released. All right, so the way that you can get to these files and look through them yourself is to visit war.gov/UFO. And it'll take you to this website here from the U.S. Department of War. And as you can see, as I start scrolling down, I've got PDFs here. It tells you what agency they're from. Like I said, the type of document. We've got FBI files. At the bottom here, you can see that we've actually got 17 different pages of files. But what I want to do first is I actually want to talk about something that really caught people's attention, and that was the NASA files. So they actually have a handy search button. It's not that powerful, but I definitely noticed you can search some of the titles of these files in the search bar. So I'm just going to search for NASA files. All right, and here I see a list of the NASA files. Again, we've got PDFs. We've got 2 pages of NASA files. And on the second page, we've got images. And I actually want to click on some of these images and show you because they really got people's attention, especially at the beginning of the day, Friday. So here's one, and it says, "This archival photograph depicts the lunar surface as viewed from the landing site of Apollo 12. The image features a highlighted area of interest slightly to the right of the vertical axis of the frame above the horizon in which unidentified phenomena are visible." And sure enough, it looks like we can kind of see the shadow of some things from Apollo 12, maybe from at least one of the astronauts. And in the picture, in the distance, in the dark vastness of space, we've got what looks like some sort of light worm. That's the best way I can describe it. The next NASA image, kind of similar from the landing site of Apollo 12. We can see some lights in the sky, or what looks like lights off in the distance. Same thing with this one. From the landing site of Apollo 12, another bright light in the distance. And in this photograph, we can see 5 areas of interest, lights in the distance. This one really got people's attention because it appears to be something we hear a lot about, and that is a triangular shape. Well, maybe, because what we see are 3 points of light. Of course, my geometry tells me that any 3 points do make a triangle, but our imagination definitely wants to fill in the gaps here and tell our brain that this is some sort of dark triangle in the sky with each point illuminated by a light. And actually it says, as part of the review of historical UAP materials under Pursue, DOW has opened a case to investigate the accompanying NASA photograph from the Apollo 17 mission taken December 1972. The image contains 3 dots in a triangular formation in the lower right quadrant of the lunar sky that is clearly visible upon magnification of the image. While this photo has been previously released and discussed by keen observers, there is no consensus about the nature of the anomaly. New preliminary U.S. government analysis suggests the image feature is potentially the result of a physical object in the scene. Additionally, as part of this investigation, the government has obtained the original film from the Apollo 17 mission, and the results of the full NASA and DOW analysis will be released when completed. Wow, that's really interesting. I'm not sure if this description was on this part of the image when it was released on Friday. If it was, people didn't read it because automatically people were thinking that this was a new image. But apparently it had been released to the public before. So I'm confused now as to why people thought that this was a new image. Maybe they just didn't read the description, or is this description new? I'm not quite sure. So we've got intriguing NASA photos, but they've actually been out there for quite a while. So let me know what you think about that. Does this bolster the case that we went to the moon? Or does it bolster what I've said all along, is that I don't know if we went to the moon or not, but what I do know is there's much more to the story than what they're telling us. Let's take a look at some PDFs that have been released. Here's a collection of historical files compiled in a pretty massive PDF. This is 190 pages. So a lot to go through. This is just one of the files, one of the PDF files. The downside about these files, as it turns out, it seems like all of them had already been released before. The plus side is they are of magnificent quality. As you can see as I scroll through here, I mean, the envelopes are perfectly legible. We've never seen the documents this legible. I mean, we can read everything on here. Some of the pages, they even copied the back of the page if there was something of relevance on there. If there was anything on there, it seems like they copied the back of the page. Sometimes they took tabs of the envelopes that had been torn off and they copied the tab of the envelope, put it in there. And this is important because there are things to be learned here. As many of us who get documents via FOIA and other public requests know, oftentimes they're just completely illegible. And my friend Paul, who does the Roswell UFO tours, he noted that, hey, one of the Roswell documents in here, for the first time ever, you can see what was redacted. There was a word in the past. It was so illegible, you couldn't tell what the word was that had been redacted. But now the image is so clear, we can see, oh, it was just a typo, and that's why they redacted the word. So this does give us hope for the discovery of new documents that could still be out there, because this also shows us that our government has meticulously maintained these records. I mean, they've got a lot of stuff in here. Notes from random citizens, envelopes, photographs that people sent them. Again, it brings to mind the Indiana Jones warehouse that just goes on and on and on with all these documents in there. And the more I look at this kind of stuff, the more I think, you know what, that might really be closer to the truth than it was to fiction. All right, now let's take a look at one of my favorite PDF documents. This is called a USPER statement about UAP sighting. USPER probably stands for United States Person. The description of this document says, this is an FBI 302 interview conducted with a senior U.S. intelligence official regarding his first-hand account of a UAP encounter at a U.S. military facility. They relayed to FBI agents that he and other federal and state personnel conducted searches to where orbs had been previously seen. After searching the area with the helicopter, they found a super hot orb hovering over the ground. The orb is reported to have traveled for 20 miles at a speed too fast for the helicopter in pursuit. An additional swarm of lights were seen moving in all directions. A total of 4 or 5 additional orbs were seen shortly thereafter for a short time, flaring up and then down. This pattern of 4 or 5 orbs flaring up then down continued over the next 30 minutes across the area. I've seen a lot of people shoot down some of the images and videos in these files, but I have yet to hear any logical explanation for what this file reveals. It too has some redacted information, so let's just give it a little look over here. On 2025 at approximately 1700 hours, Witness 1, a senior U.S. intelligence official, Federal Partner 1 and Federal Partner 2, accompanied by Witness 2, a senior U.S. intelligence official, and 2 pilots from a state partner organization, departed somewhere unknown, but we know this is a U.S. facility, the main area, via a helicopter to conduct a daytime aerial search of some unknown mountain range west of the facility. Previous eyewitness reports from personnel who observed orbs, lights, cited hearing thuds as if something had fallen and hit the ground. I'll just interject here, that suddenly reminds me of cattle mutilations. Someone in the comments on X, and you can check us out on X at AT Unexplained, said this document sounds a lot like Skinwalker Ranch. And I thought, wow, you know what? It does sound a lot like Skinwalker Ranch. And we know that mysterious mutilations and such have turned up at Skinwalker Ranch. And we did an episode on cattle mutilations. And the expert told us that sometimes these bodies appear to have been dropped from a great height. I'm not saying that was what was happening here. I don't know what was happening, but it's very interesting that they were hearing thuds as if something has fallen and hit the ground. At 1751 hours, so 51 minutes later, someone spotted a large cavern entrance and conducted a short orbit of the location. Wow, I don't know what to say about that. They go looking for orbs, and they spot a large cavern entrance. This clearly makes it sound like they did not know about this cavern entrance and were not expecting to encounter it. Boy, it sure would be nice to know the location of this. And that is one thing we're going to see over and over again in these files. A frustrating thing is that so much metadata has been removed from the files, making it very difficult to conduct your own research. Going back to the report here, at approximately 2050 hours, call sign 1 landed west of the unknown mountains and dropped off Witness 2 with Federal Partner 3 personnel. At 2052 hours, so 2 minutes later, call sign 1 headed toward somewhere secret to refuel, and a second helicopter briefly landed to await refueling, but then lifted off and returned somewhere. At 2141 hours, call sign 1 lifted off from a secret location and headed toward debris spotted by the listening post / observation post. I suddenly got chills, Roswell vibes here. It says Federal Partner 4 personnel using forward-looking infrared, that's FLIR, and night vision goggles at an unknown location located approximately 4 miles east of somewhere in the mountains. Call someone orbited the location while searching with night vision goggles, and it says the pilots were using those, and the naked eye by Witness 1, with the aid of the helicopter spotlight in near full darkness for several minutes with negative results. 8 minutes later, call sign 1 departed the search location to return to base and received notification that the listening post observation post that blank had blank hits bearing blank 4 miles out from their location. The JOC then provided coordinates, call sign 1 moved to intercept. So this is telling me the listening post, observation post reported some number of hits, and I'm assuming those hits to be orbs, and they sent call sign 1 to intercept. I have no idea why they would need to redact the number of hits. Very strange. At 22:02 hours, call sign 1 arrived at the aforementioned coordinates and spotted a possible aircraft on the horizon moving away to the west. The listening post observation post confirmed the sighting, then relayed they spotted an orb under FLIR and described it as super hot, hovering at ground level before heading bearing unknown from the LPOP, listening post observation post. LPOP reported the orb was heading east and then south at a high rate of speed and then broke into two objects. Call me crazy, but I think that's anomalous right there. I don't think we have any craft that can split into two different crafts. Anyways, LPOP directed call sign 1 to head south to intercept. At 22:07, so 5 minutes later, JOC reported 5 military aircraft from unknown were in the airspace conducting a training mission. Once on station, call sign 1 searched the location with FLIR, night vision goggles, and the naked eye, but did not locate the orb. LPOP reported the orb gained elevation, came within 10 feet of call sign 1, and then headed east somewhere. Call sign 1 moved to intercept, but LPOP reported the orb continued southeast and estimated it to be past some road 20 miles from the current position at unknown. Call sign 1 was unable to match speed, broke off pursuit. However, the co-pilot reported seeing under night vision goggles something emerge from the two objects and then travel in a different direction at a high rate of speed. So now we have a third object emerging from the previous two. At 22:18, call sign 1 remained wherever they were, awaiting instructions when the pilots with night vision goggles and the naked eye spotted a swarm of lights, too many to count, moving in all directions but generally located west of somewhere and headed south. JOC relayed they contacted the military aircraft who were en route to assist, and their ETA was 2 minutes. At 22:27 hours, call sign 1 lost visual of the swarm. At approximately 22:27 hours, in proximity of somewhere, headed south, witness 1 with the naked eye and the pilots with their night vision goggles spotted 2 large orbs appear in close proximity to call sign 1, to the west and above the rotor disc. From the naked eye perspective, the 2 orbs appeared to flare up and remain stationary side by side. They appeared to be oval-shaped, arranged orange in color, a white or yellow center, and emitting light in all directions. After a few seconds, a third orb flared up below the 2, and then another one below that one, until there were 4 or 5 in total below the original 2. After a few seconds, the orbs began to flare down in reverse order while appearing to be stationary until visual was lost. At 22:28, call sign 1, witness 1, naked eye, and the pilots, night vision goggles, spotted 4 or 5 orbs, similar to the orbs that were in close proximity to the helicopter, appeared to the west over the mountains above the aircraft. The orbs flared up one at a time in a horizontal formation, and after approximately 10 to 15 seconds, flared down in the opposite order. At approximately 22:33, the pilot spotted a similar orb formation to the east in the direction of an unknown town name. Wow, that would be great to know the name of that town. The orbs flared up one at a time in a horizontal formation, and after approximately 10 to 15 seconds, flared down in the opposite order and lost visual. At 22:41, pilots spotted a similar orb flare up west over the mountain. After several seconds, the orbs flared down and lost visual. 22:49, while positioned, IVO, they spotted a swarm of lights moving in all directions west of somewhere, with 3 distinct orbs in a triangle formation. After several seconds, the orbs flared down and lost visual. 22:52, while positioned approximately 10 miles north, they spotted 5 to 6 orbs flare up. The orbs flared up one at a time in a horizontal formation, and after approximately 10 seconds flared down in the opposite order and lost visual. 22:57, while positioned 10 miles north, they spotted 4 orbs flare up over the military aircraft as they descended to land at unknown. The orbs flared up one at a time in a horizontal formation, and after approximately 10 seconds flared down in the opposite order and lost visual. At 23:06, something happened. That's completely redacted. At 23:16, low on fuel, they returned to the operations center. At 23:20, they headed southbound for the operations center, and already in air-to-air contact with federal partner aircraft past each other, headed north towards the site code name. Witness 1 comments. We have a large portion of that redacted, and then pilots indicated they were recording. However, many sightings were above the helicopter, which was outside of the helicopter's FLIR camera angle. Some things I could not see with the naked eye, but I recall the pilots calling out sightings. The orbs appeared to break off from call sign 1 and pursue the military aircraft. I want to make a little note here about these orbs flaring up and down. We might be tempted to believe that these are military flares. However, if military flares were being dropped, they would, of course, potentially flare up sequentially in order, but they would not flare back down in reverse order. Instead, the first one that flared up would flare down first. The last one that had flared up would be the last one to flare down. So it is kind of anomalous that these lights were to flare up and down in reverse order. Or so it seems to me. I think this case is absolutely wild. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this case. And does it remind you of Skinwalker Ranch, or what does it remind you of? I mean, for all we know, maybe it was near Skinwalker Ranch. Okay, last but not least, one of my favorite videos from Friday's Disclosure Day, and that is of some bright object moving through a huge field of windmills or turbines. Speculation online is maybe this was Palm Springs. And the interesting thing about Palm Springs, California, is we know 29 Palms, the military base, is not that far from there. The description of this turbine video says the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command submitted a report of an unidentified anomalous phenomenon to AARO, consisting of 1 minute and 39 seconds of video footage from an infrared sensor above a U.S. military platform in 2024. The reporter did not provide any oral or written description of the observation. Okay, so the Indo-Pacific Command is actually headquartered in Hawaii, and a little Google search tells me it's the oldest and largest U.S. Unified Combatant Command responsible for military operations in a massive region encompassing roughly half the Earth's surface. So I guess that really kicks the door wide open for where this could have been filmed at. And I have seen speculation that this military platform was probably a drone, maybe of the MQ-9 Reaper variety. All right, let's check out the video. Okay, so right away we see this bright object navigating across over maybe water, maybe land. It honestly is really difficult to tell. To me, the most striking thing here at the very beginning is all the data is blacked out. We don't know anything. Location, altitude, velocity, nothing. Now, Here's where it gets really interesting for me. The bright object enters this field of turbines. I've seen estimates these could be up to 400, 500 feet tall. To me, and I've slowed this down, it looks like this object is weaving in between them. It looks like it goes behind some of them. At one point, it even looks like it interacts with something on the ground. To me, right here, boom, it goes in and out is what it looks like to the naked eye. Now, there are people that say this is actually a balloon. That, yeah, if you stabilize things, this object is actually moving in a straight line. They also are claiming that it did not turn around and change direction here. Actually, the Reaper turned around and changed direction. And that's why our brain is telling us that this is an optical illusion, that the object is still going in a straight line. They use the parallax effect to tell us that, hey, we're just seeing a balloon here. Let's get to it going through the turbines. Again, it's regretful that we are limited in the calculations we can do on this, the analysis, the research, because we truly know almost nothing. If we knew where this was at, if we knew how big these turbines were, if we knew the altitude of the object, there's so many calculations, useful calculations, that we could do. Instead, we've got none of that. And I have to wonder, is this on purpose? Has all this information been redacted to simply make it impossible for the public to get any kind of quality information about what we're seeing here? And again, with my bare eyes, I see an object weaving through this field of turbines and slowing down and changing direction. That's what I see. That's what my eyeballs tell me. Some people online, because I asked the question, what can maneuver this way? Some people said instantly, a drone. A drone, you dummy, can maneuver that way. Well, I do find that answer to be a little bit simplistic. For example, if this is just a drone, why is our military reporting it as UAP? Why not just identify it as a drone? And plus, what level of drone? Because we don't know the size of this object. We don't know the speed. We don't know the altitude. I've also done some research on these turbine fields, and it seems like a lot of them are no-fly zones for drones. Would the drones shut off when they entered these turbine fields? That's up for debate. It might depend on where this turbine field is, because a lot of them just may not have the technology apparently to shut the drones down as they enter. That brings up this notion of, is this a hobby drone? Are we saying that a hobby drone can fly through a field of turbines like this at this speed, at this altitude, with that maneuverability? Maybe a commercial drone. We could probably find some commercial drone experts to testify about such a thing. I even have reached out to Palm Springs, California. Their turbine field is off limits to drones because it's part of their airport authority. And here recently, the police have posted warnings to drone operators, hey, be aware of where you're flying around town, because a lot of the town of Palm Springs is off limits to drones. Is this a military drone? I have no doubt that our military drones are capable of amazing feats. And okay, that's fine. But we have a military platform recording this video and reporting it as a UAP. So why, if this is so easily identifiable as either a hobby drone, a commercial drone, or one of our own military drones, why can we not identify that? Why are we reporting it to Aero as a UAP? Why are we reporting it as a UAP? An unidentified aerial phenomenon? Perhaps an unidentified anomalous phenomenon. And by the way, the standard definition of UAP now is unidentified anomalous phenomenon. And you would think that if our military is reporting a UAP, that there would be something anomalous about it. Is that the case here? Because if there is something anomalous, that, in my mind, rules out drones, at least hobby drones and commercial drones. Now, that could open the door to one of the scarier possibilities, and that is that we know our military space has been subject to drone or some kind of incursions for the last several years now. And apparently with impunity. It seems like we can't stop them. We can't figure out where they're coming from. And we can't figure out where they're going. That also, to me, makes those types of incursions anomalous. I believe some of these videos are absolutely connected in some sort of way to the incursions that are happening in our airspace. And redacting all this data could be a way for us to not figure out exactly what is happening. Because it would be truly terrifying to know that we have adversaries flying with impunity in our airspace. If that were true, some of these things would be tantamount to an act of war. And that would be a very scary, dangerous situation. As a matter of fact, I fully believe that in these cases, when it comes to invasion of our airspace, the sabotage we've been seeing of our power grid, our internet, etc., that aliens is the least scary option. All right, I've got one final thought here with these UFO files that have been released by our government, and that is I couldn't help but notice these things went out fast, and they have been meticulously curated. So much so that honestly it's a little bit suspicious, and I can't help but wonder, were these files just sitting on go, waiting to be released to the public? Things like the NASA files, which had been released long ago. Things like these historical documents, which had also been released long ago. Videos that we can't really make heads or tails of and have all the data completely redacted. I've proven with my recent study of the National Archives that in the Roswell incident, there was a definite cover-up of information to do with the Roswell incident by the Air Force and others. I have a hard time believing that that's not still happening now, and to a much greater degree than ever before. Okay, Unexplained Ones, let's get into this giveaway stuff before we let you go. We've got lots of signed books to give away by authors like New York Times bestselling author Patricia Cornwell, Disney author David Koning, Bev Vincent, who writes in the Stephen King multiverse, friend of the show Lee Starks, Colonel Drew Miller, and much more. Just be a sub, leave a comment, and of course, if you like the video, smash the like button for me. That would really help us out. All right, Unexplained Ones, until next time, this is Dr. Mounts. Remember, take some time this week to get off your screens, head out into the woods, look up at the skies. You may not spot a Bigfoot, you may not see a UFO, but you might just find yourself out there. Take care, everybody.
All Things Unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, will save for closed session.